Now they being thus cast out of all places of trust, profit, and honor, and also knowing that they had lost their prince's favor forever, being banished his court and cast down to the horrible pits, you may be sure they would now add to their former pride what malice and rage against Shaddai and against his Son, Christ, they could. Wherefore, roving and raging and much ferry from place to place. This is talking about the devil and his bad angels when they were thrown from heaven. If perhaps they might find something that was the king's, the Most High's, to revenge themselves on him by spoiling that. At last they happened into the spacious country of universe and steered their course toward the town of Mansoul. And considering that the town was one of the chief works and delights of King Shaddai, and what do they, after counsel taken, but make an assault upon that? I say they knew that Mansoul belonged unto Shaddai, the Most High, for they were there when he built and beautified it for himself. Remember I told you the personalities were there from the beginning? When God made light and darkness and he separated it, so they seen when the earth and things were made, as it tells you right here. And let's keep going. We'll talk more about personalities. So when they had found the place, they shouted horribly for joy and roared on it like a lion. So when they found earth on its prey, the universe, saying, now we have found the prize. And how can we be revenged on King Shaddai for what he has done to us? Cast him down. So they sat down and called a council of war and considered with themselves what ways and methods they had best engaged in for the winning to themselves this famous town of Mansoul. These 4 things were propounded to be considered of. Firstly, whether they had best all of them to show themselves in this design to the town of Mansoul. So if they were going to show themselves to you guys on earth. 2, secondly, whether they had best to go and sit down against Mansoul in their own ragged and beggarly guise. So, come as masquerade. Thirdly, whether they had best to show to Mansoul their intentions and what designs they came about, or whether to assault it with words and ways of deceit. So, how to trick you. Fourthly, whether they had not best give out private orders to some of their companions to take the advantage if they see one or more of the principal townsmen to shoot them, if thereby they shall judge their cause and design with the better be promoted. It was answered to the first of these proposals in the negative, to wit, that it would not be best that all should show themselves before the town, because the appearance of many of them might alarm and frighten the town, whereas a few or but one of them was not so likely to do it. And to cause this advice to take place, it was further added that if Mansoul was frightened or did take the alarm, it is impossible, said Diabolus, for he spoken now that we should take the town, for that none can enter it with its own consent. Let therefore but a few or but one assault Mansoul, and in my opinion, said Diabolus the devil, let me be he. Wherefore to this they all agreed, and then to the second proposal they came, namely, whether they had best to go and sit down before Mansoul in their now ragged and beggarly guise, to which it was also answered in the negative by no means, and that because though the inhabitants of the town of Mansoul have been made to know and to have to do with before now things that are invisible, they never did as yet see any of their fellow creatures in so bad and rascally a condition as they. And this was the advice, or the fierce Alicato. Then said Apollyon, the advice is pertinent, for even one of us appearing to them as we are now, must needs both beget and multiply such thoughts in them as will both put them into a concertination of spirit, and necessitate them to put themselves upon their guard. And if so, said he, then, as Diabolus said but now, it is in vain for us to think of taking the town. Then said the mighty giant Beelzebub, the advice that is already given is safe. For though the men of Mansoul have seen such things as we once were, yet hitherto they did never behold such things as we are now. And it is best, in my opinion, to come upon them in such a guise as is common to and most familiar among them. To this, when they had consented, the next thing to be considered was in what shape, hue, or guise, what disguise they were going to come trick the inhabitants of earth so they can deceive you. Diabolus had better show himself when he went about to make Mansoul his town. Then one said one thing, another the contrary. At last Lucifer said that in his opinion it was best that his lordship should assume the body of one of those creatures that they of the town had dominion over. For, quoth he, those are not only familiar to them, but being under them they will never imagine that any attempt should be made upon the town. And to blind all, let him assume the body of one of those beasts that Mansoul deemed to be wiser than any of the rest. This advice was applauded by all. So it was determined that the giant Diabolus should assume the dragon, for that he was in those days a familiar with the town of Mansoul, as now is the bird with the boy. For nothing that was in its primitive state was at all amazing to them. They then proceeded to the third thing, which was whether they had best show their inclinations, if they're going to show you their intents, or the design of their coming to Mansoul, or no. This also was answered in the negative because of the weight